We will continue with our budget hearings. We will start with the treasurer-collector. Evening, Calvin.
Good evening.
This is on page 16. Treasurer Collector Personal Services, $377,020. Tax collection and treasury expenses, $246,000. Subtotal, $668,020. Workforce management, $110,403. Questions and comments for the treasurer tax collector?
I also have the parking, which is on page 14.
Oh, thank you, Kelvin. Sorry about that. On page 14, we have parking, which is under finance. How's this reading, Joe?
It's offset by the revenues from parking, but you see, the 76,000.
Okay.
Is
That's the meter receipts.
right. That's the total expense and total revenue,
Total expense and revenue, $76,990.
and then the expenses.
Expenses are $157,000. Councilor Bean.
President Hayes, for you to the treasurer, welcome. Two questions. One is on your expenses. It has educational benefits. I haven't seen that in any other budget yet, I don't believe. What is that for? Is that a stipend or?
No, that's to pay for education for my staff or me, outside courses, things like that.
Oh, okay, it's coursework.
For coursework that pertains to the work that my office does,
Okay,
directly or indirectly.
okay. I just hadn't seen it in the other budgets. I was just surprised to see it here. And getting to your, over on the parking page, but you don't have to turn the parking, it's not there. I just had a quick question. I drive around the city and I see all these parking meters up by like the high school on Pritchard Street and the flats, and I really don't see any. I wonder, why do we have them there and not places where people are? And is there a thought to use some of the money that you have maybe to do a parking study?
Oh, that's why the increase is so.
You know what I'm saying? If you go down Pleasant Street and Pritchard Street, there are parking meters there, but there's nobody there. And there might be other parts of the city where it may make sense to put meters, but.
Right. I haven't considered that part of it yet.
Okay.
I think it's certainly a good idea to do at some point, and I know one or two other councilors have spoken to me about parking meters in certain areas or how things work. I think that's something that could be looked at citywide.
Yeah,
to
that's
see
what I
what
mean.
works and doesn't work.
And I don't know whether you had money in your budget to be able to do that or not. That's what I was just.
It could be done. Right now, in terms, my focus in my job has been to start off with the tax title accounts and try and get that part of it in order and working on the tax collections. From there, I was going to work on cash management and see what that
Right.
was going on. And oh, by the way, I'm also doing parking.
And parking garages, I understand too.
And the
right?
garage have been taking some time. In fact, in the parking budget, if you'll notice on the parking, building repair and maintenance, I had originally requested $150,000, then asked that it just be reduced back down to 30, which is the normal amount, because there is some work that needs to be done at the garages. I'm not ready to start anything at this point, but I am trying to get some information together so we know what has to be done.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Green.
Hi, Calvin. Can you tell me how many senior accounting clerks you have on staff?
3. There's a principal accounting clerk and 3 seniors,
Okay. And,
plus 2 in the workforce management down below.
okay. And then on tax title foreclosure,
Yes.
FY14, 20,000, FY15, you requested 50, were allotted 45. Can you just explain to me what that is? Is that the money that it costs us to have that done, or is that, what is that money for?
That money is used for work to foreclose on tax titles that we have. When we have a tax title, that means we have a permanent lien on a property until the taxes are paid, or we foreclose.
Everybody asked me a question.
And that's part of what I'm trying to work on and get ahead. Currently, I have no parcels in land court for foreclosure, and I expect over the coming months to start sending parcels or property to land court for foreclosure,
Okay,
and I expect to be spending that money.
okay.
It pays for legal fees associated with the foreclosure, the attorneys, and then in land court itself, there are fees.
Okay.
Costs.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All set?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Mr. Brooks, thank you for being with us. Is it about 6 months on the position? In the position now?
Almost.
Okay. So I know you're still relatively new and trying to get the whole landscape in the entire picture. But can you give me a sense of, I guess, some of the short-term goals thus far that you've established, and then maybe any long-range objectives or long-range things that you're looking to tackle?
Okay. What I've been working on primarily has been the tax title accounts and trying to straighten out the list that we have, cleaning up some odds and ends of parcels that have been missed along the way. You may all have seen the ad in Friday's Sentinel. Back page was the notice that I intend to do a tax taking on June 20th at noon. So if you're looking for something to do at noon on next Friday, you can come into City Hall, and I'm supposed to stand in the middle of the lobby and announce that we're taking these parcels. And I asked, do we really have to do that? Yes, to stand there and make a big announcement. And then following up, we've been doing, I think, over the years, a pretty good job of doing the tax taking. What we haven't done is gone after the foreclosures and cleaned that up. And that would be done in, as I envision it, one of two ways: either going through land court and a foreclosure process there, and that would be on parcels that are not of low value, so they would have buildings on them, that kind of stuff. And then the other would be through the land of low value process, which would be primarily vacant lots. The vacant lots I can do as an auction, and my intention would be to structure it in a way that the city takes possession, and then we could turn around and sell it through a side yard program to abutters and begin to turn over some of this property and clean up some of the parcels that we have. That's my first. The second thing I want to work on is the cash management and just getting a handle on what we have for banking and how we invest our money. And then, as I say, the parking is always present. We need a new park and pay machine at the Main Street lot. That one is now dead. I'm also trying to get some security gates on the lower level of the Main Street parking deck or boulder parking lot, and that would provide a little security for those people, because it's all permit parking. It's not free public parking down there.
The payment machines and security gates, is that something you're looking at using that $30,000 on this year, or is that something that would be pushed out?
Those things we should be all right with from the 2014 funds.
Excellent.
Looking ahead to next year, the Putnam Street garage, the 5-story garage, the water comes all the way through the building. We need to caulk and seal all of the joints between the sections of building that are there. That's a big project. Some of the plumbing is rotted out. We need to work on that. Lighting is a third thing. Would help both with security and lower costs if we can do some energy-saving lighting.
In Putnam, or inclusive of all of our?
The lighting would be both garages.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Joseph.
Just in the same vein, what do you have in retained earnings in that parking?
Right now, as of the end of May, the balance was about 406,000. We were going to, this budget requests an appropriation of 233,990, and that would leave about 172, if, that's,
Yeah, I think I haven't confirmed, but I think those numbers sound right. Where you gotta have enough money, when you appropriate, the money has to be in the account to appropriate, so we definitely have the 220,000 or so
Right.
in
And I
this
think-
budget, and then,
I think there's
He
about
has that
170 left
Right.
after that.
Is that going to be enough to start covering the projects that you want to do, or?
It may. We may also look at, we might have to borrow. But on any of these projects, I would be back to the city council requesting an appropriation. Obviously, because there's not money in the budget to do the projects, the 2 or 3 big projects that have to be done.
But you don't think you have enough to cover what you want to do?
I'm not sure because I don't know how much some of this is
Okay.
costing at this point.
All right, thank you.
I'm only a numbers guy. I'm not an engineer.
Bricks and mortar, forget it, right?
I'm looking for help on that, yes.
Is that Counselor? Counselor Caddy?
Just a quick question. Systems Administrator stipend, what is that?
That's a stipend paid to the person who handles the Munis software within the city.
Any other questions? Counselor Di Natale?
Is that Munis person an IT employee?
No.
Who is it?
Ken Wilson?
The assessor?
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you.
Counselor Bean?
That was my question, is where that stipend went. I saw that on here, so thank you.
Councilors, I have a comment and we'll make a proposal. The second line item under personal services, the assistant to the treasurer collector is currently at $75,325. It's requested that it go to $81,432. This was connected when the assessor was before us, the assistant assessor, they were trying to bump up to that same number. And I'm auditor, I'm sorry, not assessor, auditor. And after giving it some thought, in the past, I have opposed increases to compensation that was not part of the matrix of the things that are negotiated. And I think in being consistent, I'd like to recommend that both of those be cut back to go from the, whatever, 75,325 is with the 1% COLA increase that everybody else is getting. I think people take jobs at certain pays and understand what it is and expect it. And because they hire somebody else at a certain pay, now they want to bring the others up and make them all equal. I just don't buy that. And I particularly don't buy it when we have a matrix. If we existed on merit increases, and some got the merit increases who deserved them and others who didn't deserve them didn't get them, that would be okay. But we're giving merit increases and we're giving the matrix increases. So these individuals will get their matrix increase next year. It just doesn't make sense to me to be giving those increases. I am not talking about the individuals or their job performances. I did the same thing with the veterans person this year when there was an increase that was voted there. I just try to be consistent and try to be clear. So I would make the recommendations for those two positions. I don't know the exact number, what the 1% will bring, but
I can give you the amount.
Okay.
It's $5,324, so it would bring the amount to $76,108 in both positions. 108
108.
Both of those positions?
for both. They're both aligned.
Per line.
Councilor Bean?
Mr. President, through you to the auditor, not Calvin, since you haven't been here long enough, but just give me some history again on the system administrative stipend. I'm a little curious about that. I mean, the mayor was talking about earlier with a lot of the other union contracts, all the stipends now included in the salary. So this person gets a salary plus the stipend for doing it. Just
Right. I mean, it
need some
goes
history on
back
it.
as the record in this to fiscal year 11. I think it involved quite a bit of time for that positions, and I think there was an appeal made to it's $100 a week it equates to. And, it's important for the city. That drives our municipal finance software, and that was the decision at the time.
Is it a bargain?
I think it did go through, the position at the time was in the union, so I think they were aware of it. Now the position has evolved to a department head, but the individual.
Okay. And stipend, are there any other stipends in City Hall, or is this the only stipend we have?
Actually, there is a stipend for the chief assessor. It happens to be the same position. Other than that, trying to think of other stipends within the city. There's a retirement board stipend.
Right.
But that's not in the city.
Okay.
I can't think of another stipend. I mean, there are many in the school department.
Right. That's all right. I was looking for City Hall, that's all. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Di Natale.
I asked the question because I find it justified that we are paying someone a stipend who's not an IT professional to do a job that IT should be doing. So I would just keep that under my cap when we talk about cuts, because when we had IT before us, the discussion was on not operational efficiencies, not whether we can get the best bang for our buck like other communities think. The way we think here is, I just need more people. So instead of having an IT service that provides Munis, and they're out there, we have to pay someone additional money to do the job that IT can't do. And the individual getting the money is very good at it, and I have no problem giving it to that individual because Munis is critical for the city's financial operations. But just a little side note on that, another example of services that are being rendered where we could save money doing it another way. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the treasurer collector?
Could I just
Absolutely.
respond to you on my assistant's salary?
Absolutely.
My assistant has been very helpful to me and is an important part of the office. When I came in, one of the things that was asked of her is to begin to pick up some responsibility in the payroll area, because for years, I guess, we've had a person doing payroll without any particular backup. And I was very surprised at that, because if you miss a payroll, we're in big trouble. So she has been picking up responsibilities within the payroll function just to begin to learn as a backup, and fortuitously, as it has worked out, because we did have some a recent situation where her knowledge and her extra work was necessary. Thank you.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Ms. Brooks, can you give us, I guess, a sense of the amount of time and effort for that payroll system for this person, say on a weekly basis? And secondly, is this a new duty / responsibility that's being added to that person, that individual's job description?
I would say yes, it's being specifically added to her job description in the sense that prior to this, she was not expected to be involved in that activity as directly.
Sure.
And I think the time it takes depends on the week. And there was effort put in at the beginning to learn, and then just over time to keep up with what's going on. So in this particular instance, in the last couple of weeks, she's spent considerable time because the payroll person was out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does that mean that before she had extra time, or is now she doing something that she's not doing that she was doing before in order to fit this into her weekly schedule?
I think she's juggling things around to make it fit in.
Could I
Council-
just...
And
Councilor Di Natale.
Just quickly on your comments about the pay. What makes this issue difficult for me, I sympathize with the jobs that accounting and finance do. And I agree with what Council President Hay said about his methodology. So I'm torn because I believe that in a way this is a merit increase, but at the same time, I look at it across the board throughout the city, and there are a lot of employees throughout the city that can make a good case that they have more responsibility than they did when they first got hired, and they're getting paid the same as everybody else in the union or per the contracts that are in the ordinance, in the matrix. So I believe the reason why this stands out above anything else is because you've got two employees, one in auditing and one in treasury. And the question isn't whether it's justifiable or not, it's what about everybody else throughout the city that can make a similar argument? These two stand out more than any because of the increase. If we saw this throughout the entire departments, all the departments, I don't think it'd be a discussion probably, because then we would all understand that everyone who's gotten more responsibility got the same kind of increase. But we've already got a matrix in place and step increases in place, and just to focus on two employees, as good as they are, is what brings it to the forefront and makes it noticeable. So that's why, because for me, I don't want to sound like I'm picking on just these two, but how do we look other employees in the face and tell them, well, you're going to continue to do more with less, you're doing things that you didn't sign up for originally, but you're not getting a $5,000, $6,000 increase in 1 year, merit or not. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I wish public employees were paid based on merit, because I'm biased about that too, so we wouldn't have these problems, but that's a fantasy. But that's why this comes to light. So I just want that clear from my standpoint. This is not about the people. It just stands out because it doesn't apply across the board. Thank you.
Councilor Bezal.
So I think this would be a great example of when a stipend would come in. So if this person was making $76,108 and was doing the extra duties of doing payroll, you would then give this person a stipend to do payroll. If at some point the person decided, I no longer want to do payroll, or I want to, we have somebody that do payroll, so they're not needed, then that individual would go and keep their salary. But there's no, I guess when you're raising a salary that much, there's no say that this person will want to do something forever. So I think this might be a great example where a stipend might be, if this person's going to take on extra responsibility other than their own job, a stipend might be something that would be required to give this individual. So, thank you.
Councilor Green.
Calvin, I appreciate all the work that you do in taking on this department. My question is, as now a department head or a division head, will you have employee reviews in place? I know it's just your first 6 months, but is that something that you're going to be willing to take on so that we know job performances, so you can come and say to us, yes, my department is, working, and everybody in the department is working more with less, so that it makes this easier, so that it isn't, two people with a $5,000 increase on top of what they're getting for union positions.
I've already done a employee review on all the employees in my department. It was due back in April, I think.
Oh, and you've only been on the job 6 months. Kudos. All right.
They told me I had to do it, so I did it. I didn't know I had an option.
Yeah, weird. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to, one more comment, councilors. And then, once we're done with the treasurer, I would like to allow Mr. Saracen to speak, because I have made the motion about a person in his department, which wasn't made when he was before us. But I just want to also let you know that if you go back to 2011, that position was at 67,234, which would mean in a 4-year period, the increase is going to be almost 22%. Any other questions or comments for the treasurer collector? Councilor Boishman.
That person, is she going to do this job all the time, book payroll?
Yes.
She is going to do it all the time?
Yes, part of her responsibility is to be the backup person on payroll and to be working with the payroll department on that, yes.
So it's not going to be once a year or twice a year, it's going to be all the time?
On a regular basis, she's got to be aware of what's going on. On occasion, she will be the person running the payroll or having to do certain things that normally would be done by the payroll supervisor.
Where I worked, if you took on extra duties, you get paid for it, where I work. So if you took on more responsibility, you get more pay. That's how I feel about it.
Any other Council Joseph?
This is as a comment to that. Where I work, you get rid of people and they make you work harder. Then they don't give you any money for it. Okay, that's the reality of life and business nowadays. And I don't understand in municipalities where we don't have money, we still have money to give raises like this. There's people that are doing a lot more with a lot less, and they're just saying you have a job. And that's what they're appreciating, the fact that they have a job. So it's a tough one to say that, yeah, I gave somebody some responsibility to do payroll, so I'm giving them $5,000, when that's not a reality in the life of business world these days, I don't think.
Any other questions or comments for the treasurer collector? Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Saracen, you'd like to comment?
Yeah, just, I already commented at my own hearing when it came up. I just wanted to add that, reiterate the mayor's point, was both positions, what has evolved with both positions is they're seasoned professionals. They are now part of the team, the finance team, along with the assistant assessor. Their input is very valuable. I listen to Jackie and Michelle all the time. It isn't just a team of 3, it's more of a team of 6. And this was an attempt just to align them with their duties, with their experience, their years of service, not only with Fitchburg, but maybe other communities, with other department people that are getting that pay. So that's what the attempt was.
Thank you.
Yep.
Moving forward to, oh, I'm sorry.
Just one more.
Yes, Councilor Joseph.
I mean, just to put it in perspective, Mr. Saracen, how long ago was it that you were making $81,400?
I don't know.
Looks like
I'd have to go back.
7 years.
But that was, I was the department head.
7 or 8 years. I know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it hasn't been...
More than that.
Well, the actual for
auditor?
2009 was $82,554. So less than 6 years ago, that's what the department head was making. So I don't know. I know it's a sign of the times that people make more now because the cost of living's gone up and everything, but it's 6 years ago, that's what the treasurer collector was making. Well, in this case.
Councilor Di Natale.
You're absolutely right, Councilor Joseph, and in my opinion, based on all these budget hearings we've had, the one central thing I can conclude from all this, whether you look at salaries, whether you look at performance reviews, management, the city is being poorly managed. It just is. And it's just a fact, based on all the testimony we've heard for the last 2 weeks. Salaries don't make sense, steps don't make sense. We have a mayor who will do performance reviews whenever she feels like it, and yet there are operational inefficiencies throughout the city, and we wonder why those inefficiencies continue, because if you don't do evaluations, how do you know what the efficiencies are and the inefficiencies are? I mean, the one big takeaway from this whole thing is the city of Fitchburg, particularly City Hall, is being run extremely poor. Thank you.
Moving forward to debt service, page 17. Maturing debt, $3,585,000. Long-term debt interest, $650,000. Short-term debt interest, $100,000. Certification costs and band, $50,000. Total, $4,385,000 under debt service. Any questions or comments? Councilor Bean.
The questions are to...
I'm not sure. They go to Calvin or Dick? Both of you?
With Calvin and...
Calvin, I just had a question regarding the short-term debt interest.
Yes.
You'd requested $350,000, and you got $100,000. What were you thinking?
I think historically, the appropriation has been $350, if I'm not mistaken. And that is a combination of asking for money to cover the interest payments on the short-term debt that's issued normally at the end of June, and also to put in a reserve in case we need to do some borrowing in the course of the year. I know a few years ago, Fitchburg had to borrow for cash flow purposes. The financial situation is much better now, so that's not necessary. But it still would be appropriated on the off chance that there was some emergency. I go back to 2008, the ice storm, and if the city had to borrow money just to deal with an emergency like that, you want to have money within the budget to handle it without having to say, where are we going to do this?
It just looked odd when I looked at the line item for projected was 14,000.
Right.
And you asked for 350,000.
Right.
And then you got 100,000. So it just kind of looks odd and out of place.
I understand. In the past, it had been 350, and I think we reduced it to 100, which is about what's actually spent.
Okay, thank you.
Come July 1st, Calvin?
Yes.
What will we owe in short-term?
I don't know, because we are borrowing on Friday.
Do we have an approximation? I guess my question is,
The interest rate will be?
is it going to be more than $100,000?
It will not be more than 100.
Because if it's more than $100,000, then this
No.
budget, in one more way, is not balanced.
No.
Okay.
It will be less, and part of it is to cover the interest costs, and part of it is to cover the borrowing costs.
Councilor Di Natale?
On that note, if you recall, several weeks ago, we got a draft, and the draft originally said $150,000. I recommended at that time that $25,000 be cut. I think it was during a finance committee meeting. And everybody in the room said, don't do that, we need that money. Then the next draft, the mayor submits it at 100. So, again, another example of we're told one thing, and then the opposite happens. The reason why it was brought to 100 is because they didn't need the 150, and they got caught on it. And by they, I mean the mayor. The mayor got caught on it. Because the average spend in that account since 2009 is $97,000. And if I look at the projected, the requested of 350, I understand the whole reason for short-term debt interest. It gives us some leeway. But in a budget that is supposedly very tight, just keep that in mind when councilors talk about money that's being padded in accounts, okay? Because if the mayor really felt 150 was necessary and was being pushed for it, she wouldn't have changed it. So I just find that interesting, and I believe 100,000 is more than sufficient, because it's been sufficient for the last 4 fiscal years. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions regarding debt service? Again, thank you, Mr.
Am I
Vice.
really done?
You are really done.
Thank you.
No.
Moving forward to Building Department, page 41. Good evening, Mr. Lanciani.
Good evening, councilors.
Councilors, I'm going to read page 42 and 43. We're going to have Building Department Inspectional Services, Personal Services, $426,901. Inspectional Services Expenses, $30,000, I'm sorry, bringing the total to $456,901. Next page is Building Care and Maintenance with a subtotal of $305,700. Building Other Miscellaneous Expenses, $12,500, bringing that to $318,200. And Traffic Signal, total of $39,000. Questions and comments regarding the Building Inspectional Services, Personal Services. Councilor Di Natale.
President, I must recuse myself on advice of counsel for just the personal services discussion. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale has recused himself. Councilor Green.
Hi there.
Good evening.
How many employees do you have in your department?
7. 5 of them are full-time. 1 is a part-time clerk, and 1 works 3 hours a day, well, roughly, through CDBG as a building inspector. The rest of his time is under facilities, which is under my budget, but So I would be 6 plus a half, based on the budget that's before you.
Okay. And the credentials of your employees, your inspectors are what I'm asking about.
I have myself, have state credentials as a building commissioner. I have one of my local inspectors who's certified to his credentials are building commissioner. My part-time inspector credentials are local inspector. And my plumbing inspector and my wiring inspector are credentialed in those areas.
And how much revenue does your department generate?
This year, through the end of May, over $500,000.
And what's the breakdown of that revenue, roughly?
Roughly, I gotta get to that page. Excuse me. $460,000 in permits, $31,000 in licensing, and $2,000 and some change in miscellaneous.
All right, and your revenue gets put into a general fund account that everybody draws upon, correct?
That I would go to, my money is turned into the general fund, yes.
Right.
Okay. If it was not turned into general fund, and if you had control of your $500,000, what would you do with that?
I would increase my staff. And I would increase training for my staff so that they could stay current, because mostly I would add staff and then supplement the training.
All right, more inspectors?
Definitely more inspectors, building inspectors, more clerical staff.
What would be the ideal number for your clerical staff? Best case scenario?
Best case scenario, 3.
And you have one part-time now?
I have 1.5 clerical positions.
Okay. Thank you.
Council Beazall.
Good evening.
Good evening, Council.
If I'm looking on the principal clerk line, it was projected 22,600, and you requested 38,628, and the mayor authorized 38,628. Is that because it looks as if the data entry clerk that you requested was cut? Is that the reason why? Or?
The principal clerk last year was part-time. I asked for the principal clerk to be full-time. The mayor has agreed with that. The data entry clerk, we asked for a full-time data entry clerk to try to catch up to some of the filing that is just in buckets in the back room. That has been eliminated.
That's been eliminated. And also on contract services for traffic signals, it went from 99,000, and you requested 120,000, and the mayor gave you 14,000.
That's correct. That means if any traffic lights break this year, we're not going to fix them, and we're not going to do any preventive maintenance in the wiring that's up to 30 years old that is failing, like the wiring on Main and Oliver right now.
So, was this relayed to the mayor when?
Yes, last year when we came, I had to come to city council because we were having some problems with some traffic signals.
If I could just, for 1 second, Counselor, if I could just ask, because we have a counselor who had to recuse himself only for the personal services component, if we have questions about personal services, could we finish that first, Angelo, and then...
I have no other questions on personal.
Does anybody have any questions on personal services? Then we can ask Counselor Di Natale to join us, and we continue here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was asked why, for your...
Just 1
I was
second.
asked...
Counselors, just 1 second. You have a personal services then you need to wait.
I have a question for you.
Let him go, and then we'll get back to it.
You say to us that you made $500,000. Why are we charging so much to the residents of Fitchburg when they pull out permits? I thought the purpose of us...
Counselor, that's not a personal
Oh, it's
services.
not, I'm sorry, Dan. I
So
thought it was...
Council Dean Taylor can
It
answer the
can be in here.
Sorry.
And we'll get back to you. You can, that's a good question, but I'm going to let Counselor Beazall finish his line of questioning, and
I'm sorry,
we'll get back to you there,
Sorry,
Counselor.
Counselor.
No, that's fine,
There's the exercise.
that's fine.
personal question for you, but not personal services.
I
Counselor
just have one
Beazall.
more personal, no, I'm just just kidding, Marcus, just kidding. Okay, so getting back to, since Councilor D'Antalli wasn't here, I asked about contracted services. It was projected $99,000. There was $120,000 requested, and the mayor cut it to $14,000.
Okay, and the 99,000, I had come to council last year, we had some traffic signals that had failed. I had asked for an appropriation for some money so that we could repair some signals. At the same time, we were given some money because we had identified other intersections that were in need. That money, we identified 3 intersections. The paperwork went to purchasing. We're waiting. I'm told that soon we may get those 3 fixed. That's why the 99 is projected. We know that several of the intersections, the controllers, the wiring, the fixtures themselves are well past expected life and need to be updated. Looking at the number of intersections, $120,000 a year would give us an opportunity to almost keep up with anticipated repairs.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Green.
Again, still talking about the traffic lights, I see in traffic signal maintenance, you requested 30,000 and was given 5. So I just want to understand, with the amount of intersections that we have, are you telling me that your budget of $39,000 to fix traffic signals, how many traffic signals would that fix?
39,000 would fix 1, but that also, that 39,000, the 20,000 pays for the electricity to run them. And the light bulbs that we occasionally have to replace because they burn out. That doesn't fix anything. The 20,000 is Unitil light bills, and it's light bulbs. The 5,000, right now, that line item, we're almost at 6,000, so we're borrowing it out of other places. 5,000 will not cover 12 months' worth of that line item.
Would the line item, would the 30,000 that you requested, would that be a reasonable number?
That would cover that, and that would give us some money so that one intersection failing, we would be able to address. Right now, if an intersection fails with the budget proposed, if we're fortunate and the lights will blink, they will go on blink until we can come to find a source of money so that we can repair it.
Thank you.
Counselor Boishman.
Yes, back to the subject I'm asking you. We made $500,000 in your department.
Yes,
according
this
to
year.
you, right? Why are we, I always thought that when I went to the building department, you were supposed to be working with the people of Fitchburg to help them, not charge them so we can pay our bills, but to make recommendations how to make things better. Like, I'm hearing stories like somebody wants to put windows and doors in, we're making them go out and get a, engineering report to put windows and doors in. Is there a reason why, or to tear down porches?
The reason why is the state building code requires anything other than a 1 and 2 family home, any work for a building permit, to have an architect or engineer involved. On April 14th, the state revised that and said that the building commissioners now can use their discretion, and on a project that is a routine thing that for years didn't need an architect or an engineer, I now can use my discretion and waive that requirement. So any repairs that have come in since then that are of a routine nature, we're not requiring an architect or anything. But for the whole, when the building code was changed, the state said no permits could be issued without an architect or an engineer involved. Therefore, I could not do it. In April, when they said we could, unfortunately, April 14th, they changed the building code. The second week in May, they told us it had been changed, and we could start following it. So now on minor repairs in properties other than 1 and 2 family, we look at it, and if it's a routine repair, we waive the requirement for architect or engineer.
Now, your inspector's going out and inspecting multifamily homes, and you doing the same thing. Are we working with the people that own these homes? Or are we just saying, you gotta do it, even if you got hardship, you gotta have it done?
The state building code requires anything other than a 1 and 2 family home to have a valid certificate of inspection before the building is used or occupied. We are trying to work with them. Part of the role when we brought a part-time inspector on was to work to help bring this housing stock up to meet the minimum standards of state code. It is hard with some people, they've never done this before. We still don't have the resources to do it to the extent it needs to be. We will work with anybody, we try to. There are some people that get upset with us because they get a civil assessment because they have not brought their building into compliance. A civil assessment to a homeowner usually happens because they've ignored our first 3 requests to work with us and bring their house into compliance. We then issue a civil assessment to them. That usually gets a phone call so that we can then meet with them and work with them to try to get their house inspected and brought into code compliance.
Now, I ask you these questions because at one time the housing market was here, and then it went to here. So if you get a house that you bought, for example, far-fetched, $275,000, and you come to Fitchburg, Mass, now your house in Fitchburg is worth $100,000. And you come in and you say, Paul, you got this defect, but it's really not bad, but you got to fix it, and that's going to cost $75,000. It's almost better for me to say I still owe 100. Now you want 75. I lost what, 50%, 75% of the market, to walk away and give it back to you guys and just say forget it.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of housing stock that needs a lot of improvement. Unfortunately, a lot of people, when it was good, took the money and didn't reinvest it in their houses. The building code requires a multitude of things to be done. A lot of our housing stock is older housing stock, but as the codes have evolved, life safety changes within the building code have to be done to property. Exit lights, emergency lights, so that people can clearly see to get out of a building in an emergency. Handrails on their stairs so they can get safely out. Stairs that are in good repair so that when someone's going down the stairs at night in the dark, they know that all the risers are there. Those are the types of things that we're looking for inspections.
Oh, okay.
Open porches by state law since the 70s have had to be inspected by a registered design professional every 5 years. People say to me, I never knew that. I understand you didn't know that, but the building code requires it, and before I can issue a certificate to you, you have to hire the design professional to look at your open stairway and make sure that it's safe and to the standards. And the registered design professional can evaluate it to an older code and say it was built to this code, it still meets, So we do try to work with them. It's tough because it's enforcement. You asked about the $510,000, and you asked about the cost of it. We have looked at it, and the costs for permits in the city of Fitchburg are the lowest you'll find anywhere around.
Is that right?
Yeah. If we were to compare to Leominster or any community similar size, similar economic, our permits are far lower than theirs. If I could raise them so that they would be comparable to other communities and use the money that Amy's asking what I would do with it, because any permit fees that come in by state law are supposed to be used for building code enforcement or training. I would use the money for more training for the employees, and I would hire more employees so that we can make the city a safer community for everybody that lives here.
Now, are we also going to go after single-family owners that I drive around just like everybody else does, and we see a lot of single-family homes in disrepair, that and you're in a neighborhood of $225,000 to $250,000 homes, but Paul Boschman doesn't want to take care of his property, and he lets it run down, and that piece of property is no longer worth $225,000 like everybody else. It's gone down to $75,000 because it's just in repair. I mean, the windows are falling apart, the roof's peeling up, et cetera, et cetera.
When we get any complaints, we evaluate them all. I don't have the resources to go after everything. We're doing inspections on request. I have one inspector that works part-time CDBG. He's out proactive. I requested that he be full-time in the budget so that we can be more proactive. And I can't get into personal services because Mark is here, so I'll leave that, but...
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Council Di Natale.
Mr. Commissioner, I have some management questions for you.
Okay?
First question is, for the last three to 4 years, were you in charge of building?
I was the building commissioner. By state law, I'm in charge of the building. I reported to Mr. Curry because he was the department head and I was a division head.
Is that not in compliance with state law?
That wasn't.
And how long did that go on for?
From when I've been here for 4 years last month. From when I was hired until this winter, I was told that I'm a department head.
So when the mayor stated to the council on several occasions that you were your own department, that was not a correct statement?
I'm not sure when she said it, but I was told this winter after the discussions that I was a department head.
After March 5th, when she sent that directive, after getting a note from the state, did Mr. Curry have any input or have final authority over your budget after that March 5th email?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, great, because that's what he said.
He prepared, I did not prepare my budget that's before you, if that's what you're asking.
You caught me to the quick, okay? So, okay. This is after we were told things were going to change. This is after we passed a law change. This is after the state sent the message. This is after the mayor repeatedly told us we're just sharing resources. My other question to you is, do you have ultimate authority over all expenditures in your budget?
No.
You don't? No. So what do we have you for? It's a rhetorical question.
Thank you.
So we have a building commissioner for 4 years who's been run by the Board of Health. We've had a building commissioner who doesn't have signature authority over accounts in his budget. Even though the state and the city law says the Department of Building reports directly to the mayor and has for several years. Yet, we haven't been following it. Mr. Curry said at his meeting and admitted that, direct quote, "I'm not qualified to run building, but I was." So I'm pointing this out because this is another chapter in the book of Fitchburg's dismal, disastrous management practices, where we've got departments being run by people who aren't qualified to run them. And in contrast to state and city law. The fact that you're sitting here telling me that you don't sign, you don't have signature authority on everything, and that this was, I mean, I know you did a draft budget, but the final product was through him. I mean, that's amazing, because you're supposed to be the one who's accountable. And that message doesn't seem to be getting through to the CEO of the city. And I don't know what's going to take on our part to get the city, i.e. the mayor, to follow the law and to give you the authority on your accounts. Even after we were told it's changing, it hasn't. Another example of I'm telling you one thing while the opposite is true. And this isn't Marcus DiNatale saying it. This is every department head we've talked to where this is a problem. These are facts, and I hate to put out facts that make people uncomfortable, but I feel like someone's got to say something about it. So, giving that fact, do you happen to know in the, I won't call it your budget, do you happen to know in the mayor's budget, because I know some might say, well, it's the mayor's budget, so who cares, but, I mean, you had someone who's unqualified for building doing it. In your budget for City Hall maintenance, repair and care, do you know what that money's being spent for?
I have no idea.
You have no idea what that money's being spent on. You have no signature authority of what that money's being spent on.
I don't.
Why am I asking that? Because when I had a discussion a while back about City Hall repair and care maintenance expenses, there was a question asked about what's that money being used for, and I went to see you, and you said, I didn't ask for that. I don't know what it is. But you're in charge of it, supposedly. So, I'm sorry if I sound like I'm trying to be funny about it, but I'm doing all I can to not lose my cool, because I do that a lot, obviously. But, you know, so we have accounts in here, in City Hall maintenance, for starters, that you didn't even request, that you don't even know what it's being used for. Yet you're the one who's supposed to be accountable, per the org chart. And the only thing I can think about this, and this is just me spitballing because there's no other conclusion to this, is that your boss is allowing all this to happen and is usurping your authority in building for God knows what reason. What other accounts in here, just for curiosity, what other accounts in here did you not have any input in besides repair and care? What other accounts? And let's stick with City Hall maintenance. Are all those things that you...
Nothing within City Hall maintenance was I a party to.
Okay. I'm going to make a recommendation that repair and care be cut by $42,000. And I'm being generous with that because I'd cut the whole thing. I cut the whole City Hall maintenance line item account because the person who's responsible doesn't even know what the heck it's for. And nor does he have authority over how it's spent. And then I got to ask myself the big question, where is this happening elsewhere in the city of Fitchburg? Because I got to be honest with everybody. Anything from this point on the mayor says to me, I'm not going to believe it. This is the 5th time now in these meetings I've had department heads directly tell this council a complete 180 on what the mayor's telling us.
Counselor, if I could just ask?
Yes.
The recommendation is simply the cut to repair and care, because then you said you'd like to...
Well, no, I'm going to stick with the repair and care because that is the biggest line item in here other than City Hall lease, but we need that obviously, but...
Right.
I'm leery on everything else because I want to make sure that what the money is being appropriated for, there's an understanding by the person who's in charge of the money what it's for.
I understand.
I can't contain myself. It's unbelievable. I mean, there are counselors in this room that are management professionals in the private sector, own businesses, manage companies. This is the Twilight Zone times 50. Performance evaluations aren't being done. People are in charge of departments they're not supposed to be in charge of, and they're not qualified to be in charge of. Money's being proposed that department heads have no idea what it's for and don't have any authority over it. And the person who should be answering the questions is noticeably absent. How convenient. So, you just got done telling Councilor Green about traffic signal maintenance and how that account is depleted. Yet there are accounts in your budget that you didn't ask for, that you don't know what it's for, but you do know what everything else is for, but you didn't get those. So, the mayor of the city of Fitchburg is running building, basically. And I understand she's a CEO, but it's micromanagement to the T, because we were just told that these accounts are insufficient for traffic signal lights. Yet there are accounts above it that are funded at levels you didn't even ask for, nor do you know what they're for. I'm sorry this has been a long rant, but this is the climactic point for me on everything, because this is like the 6th or 7th time now. You're not alone. People have said this in a position of authority. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I would recommend that 42,000 go to traffic signal maintenance.
We don't have that authority.
I understand that, but that's why I want to cut it. And I would also like to know, after this, what we really need in this budget to do traffic signal maintenance and everything. I'd like to see the draft you prepared. Just as a comparison, because we already know all these accounts are insufficient, but the accounts that aren't insufficient, you don't even know about. I'm sorry I'm picking on you, but this has been all over the board. This is not just with building. This is in a lot of places. It's just one after another. It's unbelievable. I mean, I hope the people of Fitchburg are listening to this and understanding that this city is being managed. It's a free-for-all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Duffy, if I could follow up on something you said a little while ago that concerns me. Did you state that money that was generated through permits by law was required to go towards inspectors in training?
Mass General Law says that permit fees are supposed to be used for enforcement and/or training.
Okay, so what do we take in fees?
This year, we took in, to date, $463,000. That's through May,
Yep.
in permits.
And what have we spent on enforcement and training?
I would have to, I did not prepare all
I
of
understand. Can you get me in the ballpark? I guess what I'm looking for, Duffy, is have we spent that amount in enforcement and training, or are we in violation of the law?
that. We have not spent it. We've spent 80, 180, 280, $350,000.
So we're in violation of the law.
Roughly.
Thank you. Councilor Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just had three questions. One is, we'll stick on the
had my hand up a while.
amount we're talking about for fees and fines and that. Does that include the Great Wolf Lodge project?
The $500,000 this year does include the Great Wolf
Right, so
Lodge.
that's an anomaly. I mean, I don't think you're going to see that next year.
That is
Okay,
an anomaly, but
I just want to make sure of that. Okay, yeah, because that's probably the big chunk of it. My second question was going back to City Hall. Councilor Di Natale brought up some good points. You know, we look at those accounts, when I look at heating fuel, it looked like we're spending the same amount now as we were spending at the old building, which I thought was inefficient. So are we still heating with fuel? I mean, can you, or you can't explain that account, can you?
I can take a guess for you.
Okay.
We are still heating the old City Hall.
For the same amount of money? Or?
I don't have everyday oversight of these accounts. I don't know what the dollar values are.
Okay. Well, I'll leave that one alone. Getting back to traffic maintenance and traffic signals, I was at a ward meeting with Councilor Bezal had the other night, and a question came up regarding the upper common lights. There was supposed to be a study done or some plan done to kind of synchronize those lights better, because right now you could be waiting there for a lot longer than you should. Is that under your jurisdiction, or is that under the DPW, or is it combined?
The traffic lights is under the building department at this point in time. The lights were redone up there under a grant that DPW had gotten. They had been, we've had a company out several times working on the coordination of them. Sometimes there's been a minor problem that we've identified, and they're working through a solution on Rollstone Street certain times of day. Because of the bright sun or an extremely cloudy day, the camera's having difficulty picking up traffic, so they're working on the software and the cameras to identify that. But what we've found, and we've spent, we've had the company that did the work, and we've also had employees out there monitoring it. The backup happens because of a couple of things. One is school bus time a day, and the other, when the fire department goes through with their opticons and trips the lights, it will break a cycle, and then it takes a few minutes for the traffic to get back to normal on it. But they have been coordinated so that they're talking to each other, both sets of lights.
Okay. I must be going after they trip it or something, because sometimes it's forever, but, thank you.
Counselor Joseph.
Couple of questions. And I'm sure I forgot what they were. Out of the amount of money that you collect in fees, do you have how much you collect in fines?
I had that on one of these pages, if you give me... This year, year-to-date, $7,025.
Oh, okay. That's not, I mean, that's not an unreasonable amount.
No.
And that's mostly homeowners that didn't get a permit or something like that, or didn't follow the permit?
I know over $2,000 of that is one person who decided to hang banners on their buildings for several days advertising that they buy houses. And it took 7 days' worth of civil assessments before they decided that they didn't want their banners there.
Okay.
But most of it is $300 one-time, $200 or $300 fines.
Okay. And I guess my only other question to Councilor Di Natale's point, has at any time that you've made a ruling as a building commissioner that your ruling was overturned by Mr. Curry?
No.
And I mean, isn't that the intent of what the state law is, that you are autonomous to what happens in the city? Mr. Curry does not do anything in the realm of what you do as a building inspector. If you make a decision on a particular unit or a particular finding, you have not been overturned by Mr. Curry.
Mass General Law 143 says that the building commissioner reports directly to the chief appointing authority, in this case of Fitchburg, to the mayor, with no party in between. And the state, for several months, has been looking at how different communities do it. And that's why you say it was May. I thought it was a little bit earlier that the state notified the city. But the state came out and said, reminded communities across the state that the building commissioner reports directly to the chief appointing authority. And the state has been in contact with some of us that were aware there were different situations going, and asking whether we are running our entire departments as Mass General Law calls for.
But I mean, you have never had any decision overturned by Mr. Curry?
He has never overturned me, but I did report to him for 3 years.
Okay. That would be my concern. If he was your boss and he said, no, don't do that inspection or turn your head on that, that would be illegal and immoral, I would think, and that's never happened.
Mr. Curry, I think, has been as accommodating as possible in knowing that he was in a situation that not of his choosing.
Right. Now, does Mr. Moran work for you?
He does 3 hours a day. He's a building inspector. The rest of his time is doing facilities, which has never been under my direct.
But if we were to ask the questions that Councilor Di Natale asked about office, city hall maintenance, care and repair, I mean, those would be best to be asked to Mr. Moran because he's the facilities manager. Would he have the answers to those questions?
I believe he has the answers to those questions because he and the mayor are the ones that prepared that budget and decided.
Okay, I mean, but it's within, okay, it's within the purview, even though it's not exactly your oversight. He is part of this overall department.
The budget for next year pays him as a full-time building inspector. But my understanding from Mr. Saracen is that he will continue in the same role he's had in the past. I'm not sure I asked for it to be a full-time building inspector because we have a need for building inspectors.
Okay, so I mean, it's not like nobody out there knows the answers to that question just because you don't know the answers to those questions.
Someone out there knows the answers.
Thank you.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Mr. Lanciani, thank you for being here. And not to beat a dead horse with this building care and maintenance, but contracted services, I see that this, prior to last year, was significantly lower than it was both this year and for next year. Can you give us a little insight on why that might be, why that might have increased this year and moving forward?
Which page, I'm sorry?
Sorry, I don't have the page under
43.
43 in contracted services.
City Hall maintenance.
Don't know what that is for. Sorry.
Okay.
My guess is that that's the cleaning company, but
Okay. I thought we had less square footage with our current situation than we did before, so I'd hope that the costs would go down. But in any case, hypothetically, if the department was yours to project and forecast and create goals, moving forward, what would your short-term goals be and what would your long-term objectives be?
my short-term goals would be to increase our staff and efficiencies within the department and be able to meet the minimum requirements for inspections, to be able to get out and make more inspections of housing stock. Long-term goals would be to noticeably improve the quality of life for the residents of Fitchburg by making sure that all of the housing stock and other buildings are safe and meet the minimum standards of the state code.
Thank you. And a final question. Your department deals with kind of an incredible number of both new and existing both business owners and residents. So much like Councilor Boschman talked about of, we deal with fines, so it's kind of inherently unpleasant whenever you're talking about fines and different fees and structuring, et cetera. At any point, if we examined, I guess almost a customer service training to be able to help those kind of the clerical front end staff to be able to kind of help take the edge off, maybe help assist people, kind of bring them through the various steps of, if you're a new business owner, the different steps you might take, or if you're a developer, how to be a little bit more conducive to business relations.
We have looked at that and had several starts and stops. The mayor did come to me today and say that she and John Barrett and Jerry and I will be sitting down shortly and coming up with a whole system on how we can help people through that process. So I'm looking forward to that happening.
So we could add that to the list of short-term goals.
Could I perhaps answer that a little bit better? So we have developed 20 checklists for 20 specific businesses. They are across different departments. Business will likely have to go to the city clerk's office, the Board of Health, the building department, the fire department, and potentially other departments if they are a specific kind of business. So those checklists are in draft form. They're sort of posted outside of Jerry's office right now as we're going through those. And we've actually created some space where we're going to be posting a whole list of them outside of the office. So we're going to have these sort of slots. So when you come in, you see the building department, and there's these how-to guides, how to open up a small retail shop, how to open up a restaurant, how to open up a dry cleaning business, and so on. So those will be there. In addition to that, we're looking at how do we create services that are online. So we would work with the IT department that once we had all of these systems, do we post these forms online? Do we have fillable forms online? That kind of stuff. So here's the processes. They're in writing. They're now online. The meeting that he's referring to with Jerry and John is not to put this system on paper and to make it more business friendly, but to change the system So if we develop all these forms, they're all online, everybody knows what they are, it doesn't mean that we can't make improvements to it. So if something requires a change in ordinance to make something by right, that normally you would have to go to the ZBA, those are the kinds of changes that we would make specifically at those meetings. Or, other things that I haven't thought of. There are things that we might petition the state. So for example, a lot of us mayors are petitioning the state to allow municipalities to determine the number of liquor licenses we can offer, rather than having to go to the state all the time. There's a number of these things that are sort of happening simultaneously. Jerry is sort of project managing a lot of these things sort of under his umbrella, but they require more than just his department. And even just those how-to guides, you'll see 4 or 5 different departments that are being involved, and that's why it seems to be very complicated.
Thank you.
Councilor Green.
How often are homeowners and/or business owners using View Permit or Permit View for online forms?
We're still working there. It's growing every week. I actually looked at that yesterday when I got back from vacation and saw that there were several applications. A couple of businesses are doing it more than others. I have talked with IT, and Trevor is going to go with me to a couple of the bigger businesses that use our services a lot and help so that the two of us can train them. He will do the IT expertise. I will be explaining what the building department, wiring department, plumbing department need so that we can get more businesses online and using it, which will cut down on paperwork that has to then be data entered.
And moving forward, the new forms that are outside of Jerry's office, how much input before today did you have on that project?
You told me today they were there.
Right, because I'm curious on who,
I didn't know they were there till today. I'd seen paper there, I didn't know. I was away last week. They weren't there when I went on vacation. They were there when I came back, but I've been in my cube catching up on a week's worth of letters, so I hadn't noticed.
Okay, thank you.
We did talk to non-Duffy building officials while he was away.
Okay.
Councilor Caddy.
Duffy, you had mentioned earlier that in comparison to other cities, we have a lower permitting fee cost. But out of the cities that you looked at, how many of those cities had a dual tax rate?
I didn't look at dual tax rates. I looked at how many, I looked at permit fee costs.
I understand, but we do have a dual tax rate in the city, and it's pretty high.
Okay.
And there are other cities our size who don't. So just a comment on that.
Okay.
But anyway, I want to go back to a couple line items, and probably John's going to have to be the one to answer these for me. If you can hear me.
John is not a department head. The department head's sitting in front of us.
Well, I would like the answer to my question. If he can't answer it, I would
Mayor
like
should
to.
be able to answer it.
Mayor, before you walked in, Councilor Di Natale wants to cut repair and care, page 43, about 5 lines down, $62,000. I think he wanted to cut it by $42,000. My question would be, the electricity costs, the heating costs, the care and repair. Are we paying a heating bill for Boulder Drive? Do we pay the heating bill?
We pay a common area maintenance charge, which includes a calculation of some of the heating costs for like the common areas of the building.
Mhm.
They break it up by percentage.
Okay.
But we also have a direct electric bill that we pay through our meters.
Where in this budget is the heating bill for the old City Hall? Because I know.
It would be under You know, it would be under one of these items. I'd have to ask, see if Dick knows specifically where we charge that to, if we charge that to heating fuel, or if that's now under repair and care. I don't know if he knows.
I'd have to defer to John Moran, who has the detail.
If the mayor would like to ask John, she can ask John to give her an answer for it.
I really would like to know the answer to it.
I understand.
My guess is...
And the mayor can ask Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran is not coming forward. He's not a department head. This is not his budget. This is the mayor's budget and Mr. Lanciani's budget.
Something you want me to do? I
Ask him.
It would be under the subtotal. So the subtotal that you approve does include the heating costs for the old city hall.
My worry is if we shut the heat off in that building, the building's going to deteriorate very quickly. So if we're cutting something that we don't know we're cutting, $42,000, that would be the fate of the building unless you had to budget it some other way. So, can we ask John Moran? Can you ask John Moran?
Sure.
He's right there.
Oh, I didn't know that he...
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had no idea.
He's right there, right behind you.
Alana was in the way, I'm sorry. Do you happen to know... Would you like to come up? No?
It's not a department head, Mayor. Department heads and the mayor present the budget. This is exact.
Just trying to ask a simple question.
The old city hall heating costs, do we charge those to repair and care, or are they still under the heating fuel costs?
Both 166 and 718 Main are charged the same heating cost.
Okay, so is it under heating fuel, or is it under repair and care?
Heating fuel.
Okay. It's under heating fuel.
Which is,
27,000.
so, Mayor, what is the 62,000 for repair and care?
Repair and care would be anything that is under John's purview. So this is various things. This would be an item where I don't think that I would have a problem cutting, but also knowing that if we have small repairs to make, we can come back before the council and request these kinds of changes. So, for example, if we have a cooling issue or heating issue or a broken window or so on, you know, this would be the line item that we would use.
Who requested the $112,000?
Mr. Moran did.
And then you cut it back to
And I
the
cut it
62?
down.
All right, thank you.
If I could just follow up on that, Mayor, then are you indicating that there is a subsection of the building department's budget that the building commissioner doesn't have control of?
He does have control over it, but the plan was developed and recommended by Mr. Moran as part of this budget.
So the building commissioner has the authorization to spend that money and decide where it goes and how it goes?
Yes. It's his department.
Councilor Di Natale.
Well, that's interesting, because we were just told by the commissioner he doesn't have signature authority in that account. Okay, March 5th. Here are the facts, if we care to listen. The mayor sent an email to Mr. Curry and Mr. Lanciani. So this email proves that Mr. Curry was doing all of the following. All requests for personal, sick, vacation days be made to the mayor's office by the commissioner. Budget and financial planning and amendments be done by the building commissioner. Weekly reporting will be directly reporting to the mayor's office from the building commissioner. Sign off on expenditures, professional development, and any building expenses will be directed towards the mayor from the building commissioner, which implies that the health director had final authority over all those matters. And how do I know that? Once again, Mr. Curry testified to that fact. So We can get into the minutia of, well, does he have a power to override the building commissioner's direction on code violations and stuff? The bottom line is, the health director was running the building department for 3 years. Budgets, reviews, the whole 9 yards. And he had a hand, and his quote was, I drafted the budget for FY15. Does that look like he's got budget and financial planning and amendment authority, the commissioner? No, he doesn't. Now, we'll be told he does, but I'm not going to listen to that because it's bunk. Like you said, Mr. President, there's no separate section for building maintenance. I remember when the former commissioner was working for the city, former Commissioner Gallant. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the last few decades, City Hall maintenance was under his jurisdiction, correct? Mr. Saracen?
Yes. Yeah.
And if we're going to play semantics and say, well, there's a manager of facilities and then there's a building commissioner who the manager of facilities supposedly reports to, that's interesting because, you know, where I work, there's a finance manager and a finance controller. So what the city's basically saying is, well, the finance manager is making decisions on spending and budgetary matters without the controller's knowledge. Does that make sense to anybody in this room? When are we going to cut through the weeds and get to the brass tacks of this and just come out and say it? The department and others are not being run the way they're supposed to be. This is not about micromanaging. And if the city council will not stand forth and make this known to the public and demand things change, it's going to continue. Because even after the email, it's still continued. And I'm sure we're going to be told what I'm saying is incorrect. Well, I didn't write these letters. Must have been a phantom who wrote them. I'm afraid we're going to let this go. We're going to let it go. Just going to let it go. We're going to continue to let this go on. After we've had Mr. Curry and Mr. Lancey both say the same thing. They weren't in the same room at the same time. So from now on, we have to understand that City Hall maintenance and repair and care. Let me ask a question. Does repair and care include buying?
Are you directing this question to someone?
This is to Mr. Lanciani. Would you consider repair and care expenses be involving, under City Hall maintenance for repair and care, would you consider that expenses for clothing and for filing systems?
Clothing, definitely not. Filing systems, I would think would be a capital purchase.
But you didn't have authority over that, did you?
I had no involvement with that.
So I'm curious, how much of those filing cabinets cost that the clerk showed me were brand new in the back? How much of those cost? Because last week I asked a question about the fact that there was $50,000 left in that account with 1 month to go in the fiscal year. And then I was given an email saying, oh, that's all been encumbered. Oh, what a shock. Everything's encumbered in the last 2 weeks. And what was most of that money spent on? The filing system. How much did that cost? Mr. Lanciani.
I don't know.
How much did that cost, Madam Mayor? How much was the filing system?
Mr. Moran may be able to provide that.
So the money's not being spent per se on repair and care for public facilities because we have a senior center that's needed a new compressor or a compressor to be fixed for over 12 months. And they were told several times over there's no money for the compressor and the repair would have cost $7,000 to $10,000. Hell, let's say it's 20. And there's 50 grand in that account, and all of it got encumbered, all of a sudden. So now the senior center has got to wait longer. I don't know how anybody cannot get mad about this. I don't know how. The money's not being used for repair and care items. We've got public facility buildings that have been needing things for over a year that aren't getting them, and instead we're spending it on clothing. But don't ask the building commissioner that, because he wouldn't know, even though it's under his jurisdiction. Well, I'd love to work for that kind of a company where I can do whatever I want, no matter if my boss knows about it or not. Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
Change the pace for a minute, Duffy. Are we going to be working with the new businesses trying to come into our city? Because I got a paper that says, welcome to Massachusetts, been a friendly business. And it says here in the paper that we lost more jobs in Pittsburgh than anybody around here. More companies. We lost 14.1%. And I hear that it's very hard to come in. I hear it's very, if we want to open a shop on Main Street or anywhere, and it doesn't meet all the codes, we kind of just drive them out and say, you got to do it, or you can't open. Are we going to be trying to be more friendly so we can change this city? My goal is to change, I don't know about you, but I want a better city, and I don't have 60 years to wait. I don't have 28 years to wait. That'll put me way over 100 years old. I don't know if I'll be thinking straight then, but you know what I mean?
I
want a
would,
better city.
I'd love to see every single space on Main Street fully occupied, but I will not sign my name and put the city at risk of liability problems if the building is not safe and meet the minimum standards by the building code. I will work with anybody to try to come up with things. Lots of those, the uses haven't been there for some time. You have storefronts that are empty.
Right.
The storefronts, we have a lot of storefronts that were businesses, that now people want to put assembly uses in there, whether they call it an art gallery, because an art gallery is an assembly use, not a business use. There are several churches looking to locate into different storefronts. Again, those are assembly uses, and by the building code, when you change the use from a business to an assembly, it's a harder standard to meet. And the buildings have not been kept up to the standards necessary for a business to go from a substandard building to a building, of a different use. There's a lot of work that's involved. Unfortunately, that drives some people out. But we will work with any of them to come up with solutions, and we try to work with them and explain that on a lot of those, the first blush needs to be with a design professional to look at the space and see if it can be brought at a reasonable price into a use that they're looking at.
A reasonable price. Now, what are we looking for, Mayor? Are we looking for businesses on Main Street, or are we looking for assembly halls where we're going to have churches and the art gallery? Are we, what is the concept? What are we trying to accomplish here? Not just on Main Street, but throughout the city. Because the people of Pittsburgh are upset. They want change. I'm telling you God's truth, they want change. And we're arguing here back and forth, and we're not getting any answers. I mean, we're telling one thing here on a budget, we're getting all kinds of different questions and answers and everything else. What can I believe?
Was that a question directed to the mayor?
Okay. First, let me say I'll gladly answer any question. I see you coming into City Hall all the time. Any question, anytime, ask me it. I'll help you with the answer. In terms of the use inside particular space that is privately owned, we can't dictate if somebody owns an office space and who they rent it to. We can only help them with whatever they need to get that space so that they can occupy it. So, for example, if there is a business interested in the space, we can help that business by walking them through the permitting process. We can help them get access to capital if they need it to fit out the space. We can help them with workforce training. We can help them with changes in regulations if that's what's required, if there's a zoning board or a different appeal process that's needed to occupy that particular space. We can help them through that. If somebody chooses to rent a storefront to a church or to a barber shop, we can't say, no, you can't, one of you can't come in, we want the other one to come in. We can't do that as a city. We can only make it as friendly as possible for people to invest in their properties and to help handhold businesses who want to start and create jobs to come in. But we certainly can't tell somebody, no, you can't rent it out to this kind of business. Yes, you can rent it out to this other business.
I understand what you're saying. I agree. I know what you're saying. You can't tell me who to rent to and what I can do. I understand that. But we have had study after study after study after study after study on Main Street of what we're going to do, and nothing gets done. We spend all kinds of money on studies. And we have, I don't want to say no leadership, but but we don't have any direction of what we want to plan to do. Now I see we're putting out the bumpers, and I know, I've been reading on the emails, you like to see an art gallery, whatever it is, artists come into the city. Well, if people don't have money, what good is art? If you don't have any capital to buy your product, what good is it? That's what I want to know. I mean, I don't understand. Sometimes I'm completely lost. I mean, quite frankly, when I hear everybody talking, we're going back and forth, and we're doing this, and we're doing that, and I get the paper, and I say, you tell me to get my facts and figures, and I brought it in tonight to give it to you. Facts and figures. I don't lie. The paper says it. 14.1% job loss since 2001. The fastest one around.
All set?
Yeah.
Councilors, I guess I'll make a comment, and then I have to ask Councilor Di Natale. I have one question regarding personal services, but it's a specific line item. Do you need to recuse yourself if it's a specific line item?
Yes.
Then could you recuse yourself for just 1 minute? Mr. Lanciani, if you go to page 42. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the seventh line down. Says local building inspector. You with me?
I am with you.
Okay, in 2012, that was $20,000. It's then gone to $46,000 and $50,000 and now $53,000. Is that an individual who is a full-time building inspector?
That is Mr. Moran. He works right now 3 hours a day as a building inspector. The 4.5 hours of the balance is on facilities.
And in the future, I would recommend that this budget be changed to show us that. We're showing a full-time building inspector here who's working 3 hours a week as a building inspector. And my comment has...
3 hours a day.
3 hours a day, I'm sorry. And my comment has to do with the overall budget, and particularly the City Hall maintenance component that Mr. Lanciani seems to have no control over, no oversight, and no input into, and that is very disturbing. Any other questions or comments for the building commissioner or the mayor regarding building department? Councilor Green.
Is it my understanding then, when we talked about repair and care for City Hall maintenance, that the $62,000 would be under the direct supervision of Mr. Lanciani and how he spends that money?
That should be the case.
Then I would like to recommend that $62,000 be put into traffic signals.
Council, we can't move money.
Well, that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale?
President, the counselor can, through to Councilor Green, you can cut the line item and then have a note put on the cut sheet that when we make cut decisions, there's just a pile of money that's left what we cut. Then it's the prerogative of the mayor to...
Council, it is the mayor's prerogative what she does with that.
No,
We can make
that's where I'm getting-
recommendations.
that's
I just want
where
to
I'm
make sure the council understood that we couldn't,
No,
we won't vote on a motion that says cut it from here to put it to there.
No, right, but what I'm suggesting is, instead of not doing anything, if you wish, you can always cut a line item and make a statement about it to lobby the mayor that you want that money, when it's cut, to be specifically earmarked for this in building. We've done that many times. Or elsewhere, wherever you wish. But it's ultimately the mayor's decision where it would go. Thank you.
Councilor Green?
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Madam Mayor?
I think that's a great suggestion, and I would be open to that.
Thank you.
So you're making a recommendation that we cut that?
I would like to make a recommendation that we cut the $62,000 from the repair and care as it's listed now in the budget.
Any other comments or questions for the building commissioner or the mayor? Thank you. Moving forward, city clerk, page 4.
Mr. President, will we continue through the budget sessions until conclusion, and then pick up the finance committee
That's
meeting?
correct. Okay. Legislative. Oh, nope, going back. Did I miss something?
Next page.
Oh, I had it wrong. City clerk is page 5, councilors, I'm sorry. Okay, city clerk personal services, $238,859. City clerk expenses, $4,885. Total city clerk for $243,780. Any questions or comments from the councilors for the city clerk? Seeing none, we will move forward to city council. Page 4.
Page 5.
I'm sorry, that's also on page 5. I got my sheet wrong here. Where are we, Dick?
Top.
Oh, there we go. City council, $104,500. Any comments? Oh, I'm sorry. And expenses of $21,375, total of $125,875. Any questions or comments? Councilor Joseph.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we cut the city council personnel services to $99,000.
Okay. You all set? That it for you, Councilor? Yeah. Councilor Green.
Anna, can you explain to me the advertising expense? Is that when we, is that when jobs, is that for job postings, or what is that expense?
It has nothing to do with job postings. That's all advertising of ordinances. They have to be advertised in the newspaper between the first and final reading.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding city council? Councilor Beazle.
Yeah, I just have one question. Anna, the ordinance code supplement, I know that we are going through the gender change. Is that reflective of this year's monies and not next year's monies?
It's this year's monies. We're going to encumber them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's coming out of FY15's budget.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments regarding city council? We'll move forward to License Commission, page 6. We have personal services, $6,200. We have expenses, $3,050, total of $9,250. Any questions or comments regarding License Commission? We move forward to elections.
Mr. President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Green.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask something about elections. Is that where?
So Councilor Kuchmarek was jumping the gun for you there. I like that.
Thank you.
He's looking out for his colleague. We'll move forward to elections. Elections personal services, $29,174. Election expenses, $20,340. Total for elections, $49,514. Questions or comments regarding elections? Councilor Green.
Thank you. Anna, the election workers and that the line item from FY14 of just a little over $14,000 to FY15 $10,000 more, is that knowing that you'll need additional election workers?
No, the cost in FY14 was actually a little lower than originally projected because we ended up needing a preliminary only in 2 wards as opposed to all 6.
Okay.
And this year we've got state elections, presuming they're all in, they will be in all wards, and also it's a little extra time because the polls open a little bit earlier, so the cost bumps up a little bit more as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions regarding elections? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Could I just make
Yep.
one comment, just to make you all aware? Before the end of this fiscal year, I am going to be requesting capital expenditure of probably just a little under $100,000 for new voting equipment. I've spoken to the city auditor about it, and I do intend to speak to the Capital Improvement Commission at their next meeting. Our voting equipment is 15 years old. The last time any new parts were manufactured was in 2008. So now any repairs that are made are coming from salvaged machines. It's old technology. It's using old style, what they call flashcards, which can be unstable. Every time we have an election, we have a few problems, a few more problems. Makes me very uneasy every year. And in particular, in 2016, we're having major overhauls with the way we run elections in Massachusetts. The governor recently signed into law early voting in Massachusetts. We're also going to be having online voter registration. We're going to be having mandatory audits drawn by lottery after every state election. We're going to have enough headaches, enough work to figure out how we're going to do all this without having to worry about our election equipment. So I am going to be proposing that, and I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Councilors, before we adjourn the hearing, everybody should have received at the table tonight this sheet from the clerk and from Mr. Saracen, which had all the proposed reductions in the budget. Since we had a hearing tonight and we'll have our final review afterwards, I would ask that Mr. Saracen give us those, and you can just write them in, and he'll give you all the numbers. So then later on in the night, we'll be able to just take the vote on each one of those, and they'll all be on this sheet. Have you got what we...
Mr. President, I have one more comment, and with it a recommendation that will impact Mr. Saracen's count. So,
Certainly, Council.
For several weeks, we've subjected, this budget, with it the mayor and the department heads, to a great deal of scrutiny and accountability. And I think we should apply that same standard to those organizations, those third parties that we help partner with and that we fund. This January and February, we entertained a petition that would have capped support for the Johnny Appleseed Visitor Center on Route 2. As part of this discussion, it was asked for the financial reports and some metrics from the Appleseed Trail Association, a simple report essentially of revenue and expenditures. This report was never provided to the council. It was again requested via Dick Saracen. Again, this report was never given. At this point, I don't believe that we can truly have transparency for our taxpayers, and we don't have enough information to continue funding this organization until a financial report and some metrics are given. I don't believe that in good conscience I can vote in favor of having taxpayer funds go to help this organization. I believe we owe an increased level of scrutiny to our residents and our taxpayers. So for this reason, I'm recommending a cut of $32,000 for this line item. If and when we receive this report, I'd be happy. I think it's a good organization, but until we get more information, I can't fund it. But this said, I'd be happy to, if and when a report comes, and if and when the information looks favorable, I'd be happy to entertain an order from the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Saracen, if you give us the recommendations that have been made that aren't on the sheet. If you give us
I'll walk through the schedule. I believe there are 6, and you can all confirm. The first one dealt with the treasurer's personal services. The date is today. The position was the assistant to the treasurer. The original amount, let me, bear with me a minute.
Yep.
Was 81,432. The proposed reduction is 5,324. That was made by Councilor Hay. And the new amount, 76,108. All right, the next one below that is under City Auditor Personal Services. The same cut. It's the 81,432 cut by 5,324 to 76,108. That was made by Councilor Hay. Then under building maintenance, that's page 43. Just go to that. Yeah, I'll give them both. There are two motions on this one line item. Under City Hall maintenance, page 43, repair and care, the original amount was $62,000. The proposed reduction, $42,000. That was made by Councilor Di Natale. The new amount proposed, $20,000. And then there was another proposed reduction on the same line item by Councilor Green, cutting it by $62,000 to zero. And I think she may agree, there was a footnote, maybe to appeal to the mayor to, I don't know if you want to say this, to maybe add it to the traffic.
I do.
Right, okay. So that was the fourth cut. The next one is under City Council Personal Services. Page 5, City Councilors, the original amount, $104,500. The proposed reduction is $5,500 by Councilor Joseph. The new amount is $99,000. And then the last cut, under miscellaneous expense, the Johnny Appleseed Center, the original amount, $32,000. Proposed reduction, $32,000 by Councilor Kuchmarek. The new amount is zero.
Thank you. And if you could, Mr. Saracen, before we convene later on the evening for our final review, if you could just give us do some math and total that up, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I'll talk to you after. Yeah, before then we reconvene, okay? Thank you.
Councilor Joseph?
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the council as a whole committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. Council's Finance will meet, and then we'll